Hello, thanks for joining us. Does Scarlett Johansson's robot lack the human touch in Ghost in the Shell? Why is the pioneering French filmmaker Jean Rouch being honoured all over the world? Find out in just a second in today's film show.
You are the first of your kind.
Words like violence break the silence.
And we're joined in the studio by film critic Lisa Nesselson. Lisa, thanks for joining us.
That's perfectly all right, Eve.
Well, we're going to start with Scarlett Johansson's new movie, Ghost in the Shell. It's an adaptation of the 1989 cult manga, already made into an animated film in 1995, and 2 animated TV series, and video games, and more. But the live-action adaptation world premiere is in France this week.
That's true. This is quite ravishing to look at, as is Johansson in a silicone suit that's the next best thing to, shall we say, her birthday suit. You know, it's hard to blame cyborgs and androids and enhanced humanoids for not coming across as flesh and blood characters, but I struggle to care about any of the protagonists because they're so rarely generated moments of human emotion. Now, purists will tell you that there's very little to be gained by turning manga and anime into live action movies because comic books and animated films generate their own sort of aesthetic pleasures. But there's a lot to look at up on screen in this iteration, and the cityscapes are extremely enhanced versions of Wellington, New Zealand, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Let's take a look at how the film begins.
Breathe. That's good. Do you remember anything about the attack?
What happened?
It was an attack, terrorists.
Why can't I feel my body?
Mira, your body was damaged. We couldn't save it. We made you a new body. But your mind, your soul, your ghost, it's still in there. You are the first of your kind, Mira.
And the story is set in the future when the lines between humans and machines are blurred. Does it reinforce your concerns about technology, Lisa?
Well, I'd say in keeping with my t-shirt today, I'm just sort of an analog gal at heart. The current resident of the White House finds what he calls fake news irksome. But this is an action tale based on authentic fake news because the protagonist is sold an utter bill of goods about who and what she really is. Now, we saw Johansson's character just there post what they call a cerebral salvage after potentially evil scientists successfully deposited her brain into an artificial skull. But Mina can take alleged comfort in the fact that her soul, also known as her ghost, lives on in this shiny, new, semi-indestructible package. A year later, she's being addressed as Major as part of Section 9, a team of cyborgs and enhanced humans who are out there working for the Ministry of Defense fighting cybercrime. And they have to get to the bottom of who is murdering top scientists and researchers at Henke Robotics in particularly grisly ways. The members of Section 9 can communicate telepathically, which is handy, and their boss, played by Takeshi Kitano, he only speaks Japanese. Everybody else speaks English, but they understand each other. This is definitely the future, although all the guns they use are oddly enough available today. Intellectually, we know there's a lot at stake, and yet the emotional payoffs just feel sort of flimsy. In the realm of sheer spectacle, I would say, if you remember Charlize Theron's Furiosa in Mad Max Fury Road, and how could you forget her, and Alicia Vikander's pretty face on an exoskeleton in Ex Machina. These are arguably more indelible characters than she is. One is left with this strange impression of a powerful female character who, after all sorts of mayhem, gets to the bottom of who she is, but her predicament is interesting, but she herself is not.
But surely artificial intelligence is interesting.
It is. Should we worry, for example, about machines taking over the world, that sort of thing? I happened to be seated the other evening in a restaurant next to a prominent South African researcher who works on artificial intelligence in California, and she is working on bringing compassion into artificial intelligence. And she pointed out that in science fiction, the action is always set about 40 years in the future. And I started thinking about how things have changed in 40 years. When I was in college, nobody would have dreamed that we were all going to be taking photographs photographs with one of these instead of one of these. Technology.
You're still trying to take photos with that one, I think. Next to a French film that's also an adaptation of a book. It's called The Confession. It stars who some people consider a heartthrob, Romain Duras. Not you, though.
I actually like him quite a bit in this part where he plays a priest with a sense of humor as well as absolutely unshakable faith. And what I like about this film is that it settles once and for all whether God exists or not. Just kidding. But the verbal jousting between Romain Duras' dedicated priest and an equally dedicated atheist, played Marine Vact, in a small French town in 1944 during the German occupation is thrilling in ways the dilemmas in Ghost in the Shell just are not. Now, anybody who thought Vact was just a pretty face or a shapely form when she burst on the scene in François Ozon's Jeune et Jolie, Young and Beautiful, will be impressed by this model-turned-actress's skill at holding the screen under all sorts of circumstances. The film begins in the present day with a very young priest on his way to minister to his first deathbed person. And oddly enough, she's not a Catholic and she's not a believer, but she wants to confess a secret to him before she dies. And the rest of the film takes place in flashback. So Barney, whose husband has been in a German POW camp since before their young daughter was born, she works in the local post office. Food is scarce, men are definitely scarce, and her co-workers are all aflutter about the new priest in town, Léon Morin, who is apparently quite handsome in addition to delivering great sermons. As a communist and as an atheist, Barney really couldn't care less. But one day, just for the fun of it, she goes into the confession booth, and a game of intellectual chess with a romantic undertow ensues. I like this quite a bit.
Okay, well, next to a pioneering filmmaker whose remarkable documentaries on African tribes first popularised the concept of cinema verite. It's 100 years since Frenchman Jean Rouch's birth. His legacy is being honoured at the Cinéma du Réal Film Festival at Paris's Pompidou Centre. Rouch actually co-founded the event, which is one of the world's most respected lineups of documentary films. The celebrations are taking place all year, both here in France and all over the world, in Africa, Iran and China. What should we know about Jean Rouch, Lisa?
There's so much to say, all of it wonderful. One of the things I like best about Rouch's life is that he started out to do one thing and ended up doing another. And boy, are we lucky that he did. He studied at the National School of Civil Engineering and was sent to West Africa in 1941 to build things like bridges and roads. But he got sidetracked by local rituals, and a lifelong fascination was born. He was a Parisian who felt an incredible kinship with Africans and who made over 100 films about the sometimes surreal things he witnessed in Mali and in Niger especially. Before TV, of course, you could read about distant cultures and see filmed images like this brought back from the field. Visual anthropology, of which he is considered the father, consists of documenting and studying variations in human behavior, often but not always in cultures other than one's own, using moving images. Now, there are some strange beliefs out there. For example, recent video footage has shown us that there are grown men in the U.S. government who believe that this planet was formed in 6 days and that it's impossible for a woman who's been raped to get pregnant as a result of a rape, because her body knows. One of Rouch's most celebrated films is Les Maîtres Fous. Let's take a look.
Accra, capitale de la Gold Coast, est une véritable Babylone noire. Ici se retrouvent des hommes venus de toute l'Afrique occidentale, du Nigeria, du Niger, de Haute-Volta, du Soudan, pour vivre la grande aventure des villes africaines. Dans ces villes, le trafic ne s'arrête jamais, le bruit ne s'arrête jamais.
So did Rouch just do visual anthropology in Africa, Lisa?
No, he actually applied the technique to France with wonderful results. One of his best-known films is Chronicle of a Summer, co-directed with sociologist Edgar Morin. A poll by the magazine Sight and Sound decided it's the 6th best documentary of all time. You can impress your friends with that at parties. It was shot in the summer of 1961, and it comes right out and questions whether film can get at the truth of things, whether people behave naturally when a camera is pointed at them. I don't know what you and I would know about that completely naturally. They interviewed people about such basic topics as happiness and the working class, and then they showed the footage to the people they filmed to see what they thought of the results. Now, Rouch is credited with having coined a term you may have heard, which is cinema verite, truthful cinema. He was friends with the major pioneers of the French New Wave and very adept at making the most of the new lightweight 16mm cameras and portable sound equipment that untethered filmmakers from the studio. Some say he pioneered the use of the jump cut, which Godard usually gets credit for. In 1965, he directed what may be my favorite episode in the omnibus film Paris Vu Par, that's called Six in Paris in English, and made up of 6 short films set in different Paris neighborhoods by young New Wave directors. You can see his name there, including Jean-Luc Godard and Claude Chabrol. If you're going to be in Paris on May 31st, a plaque will be installed on the building in the 14th arrondissement where Rouch grew up. And starting in September through November, the French National Library will host an exhibit about Rouch, touching on everything from his time in the Resistance to his taste for surrealism. In addition to being an important filmmaker, I was privileged to know him. He was a lovely man. He died in a car accident in his beloved Niger, having touched countless lives for the better.
Oh, you're clearly a big fan, Lisa. Thank you so much for telling us about Jean Rouch. Well, we're going to leave you with a taste of one of Rouch's best-known films, Chronicle of a Summer. Remember our website. We're also on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
Ce film n'a pas été vécu par des hommes et des femmes qui ont donné des moments de leur existence à une expérience nouvelle de cinéma-vérité. Seulement, je ne sais pas si nous arriverons à enregistrer une conversation aussi normale qu'elle le serait s'il n'y avait pas de caméra.
Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, êtes-vous heureux? Je me dis, qu'est-ce que ça peut vous foutre? S'il vous plaît, êtes-vous heureux? N'ayez pas peur, on ne veut pas vous faire de mal.